Before there were Olympians, before the sea had a name, there was chaos. And from chaos came Gaia, the earth, and Uranus, the sky. They birthed the Titans, mighty beings who ruled the world. Among them stood Cronus, time itself, a jealous father and tyrant king. Cronus had heard a prophecy. One of his children would overthrow him. Terrified, he swallowed them whole at birth. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, each snatched from the arms of their mother Rhea. The Titaness wept, powerless, until she bore her final son, Zeus. And this time, she would not surrender. Rhea tricked Cronus, offering a swaddled stone in place of her baby. Zeus was hidden far away, nurtured in secret among the nymphs and goats of Mount Ida. And when he grew strong, he returned, not to beg, but to challenge. Zeus freed his brothers and sisters from Cronus' belly, Poseidon among them, now fully grown and radiant with power. But the battle was only beginning. The young gods waged war against the Titans in a 10-year struggle known as the Titanomachy. Thunder cracked, mountains were torn asunder, the sky wept fire. In the end, the Olympians stood victorious. Cronus was cast into the pit of Tartarus, and a new world dawned. Now came the division of power. The sky for Zeus, the underworld for Hades, and for Poseidon, the vast, unmeasurable sea. Born of silence, raised in fury, Poseidon stepped forth into his realm, not just as a ruler, but as something older, deeper, elemental. The sea had found its god. The war was over, but the world needed order. The three brothers, Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon, stood together atop Mount Olympus, surrounded by ash and silence. They looked out over a broken cosmos and cast lots to divide the realms. The sky, vast and radiant, fell to Zeus, the youngest but the boldest. The underworld, shadowed and solemn, was taken by Hades, somber and secretive. And the sea, ever-changing, mysterious, and full of promise, it belonged to Poseidon. But this was no simple kingdom. The sea was endless, untamed, and ancient. It whispered of creatures lost to time, of shipwrecks and drowned cities, of leviathans and mermaids, of power and prophecy. Poseidon claimed it not with words, but with a storm. He plunged his trident into the churning waters, and the oceans bowed to him. Waves rose in recognition. The creatures of the deep, krakens, hippocamps, sea nymphs, stirred at his arrival. He did not sit on a golden throne. He stood at the edge of his realm, barefoot on coral, gazing out beyond the horizon. To him, this was more than rule, it was instinct. While Zeus lorded over the heavens and Hades guarded the dead, Poseidon's world was alive. Fluid, it could nourish or destroy. It could float ships or sink empires. He ruled not with a crown, but with presence. And so the world was balanced, sky, sea, and shadow, each domain as eternal as the gods who ruled them. And Poseidon, with salt in his blood and thunder in his voice, would forever be master of the tides. Far below the surface, where light bends and fades, Poseidon's kingdom lay veiled in mystery. His palace, built of coral and deep-sea stone, shimmered with pearls and bioluminescent glow. Fish of every color darted through its halls. Nereids danced in silent currents. Sea serpents coiled like sentries at its gates. Poseidon was no distant ruler. He rode the waves atop a chariot drawn by hippocamps, creatures with the head and hooves of horses and the tails of fish. When he traveled, the sea parted before him, calm in reverence or crashing with fury behind him. He bore a trident, three-pronged and forged by the Cyclopes during the war with the Titans. It was more than a weapon. It split mountains, stirred earthquakes, and summoned storms. With a single strike, he could cause the sea to rise or withdraw, to offer safe passage, or swallow ships whole. To sailors, he was both a savior and a curse. They prayed to him before voyages, offered sacrifices at harbors, and built temples at seaside cliffs. A sudden squall or rogue wave, that was Poseidon's will. A calm sea beneath full sails, also Poseidon. The sea was his voice, and that voice was unpredictable. He took many forms, sometimes an old fisherman, sometimes a young athlete, sometimes an unshakable wall of water. In all forms, his presence was felt deeply. Even on land, his name inspired awe. Earthquakes? Greeks called them Poseidon's fury. He was worshipped under many titles: Asphalios, protector of safe harbors; Hippios, lord of horses; Enosigaios, earth-shaker. But beneath all names was one truth: Poseidon was motion, a god who never stood still. To command the sea is to command change, danger, life. And no one embodied that power more than Poseidon. In the early days, when gods still walked among mortals, the great city of Athens had no name. Its people flourished, its soil rich, its hills sunlit. But it needed a patron, one god to protect and guide it. Two Olympians stepped forward: Poseidon, ruler of the sea, and Athena, goddess of wisdom and war. The contest was held atop the rocky height now known as the Acropolis. The gods gathered. Mortals watched from below. Each deity would offer a gift, and the Athenians would choose. Poseidon strode forward first. With a mighty cry, he drove his trident into the ground. The earth split with a thunderous crack. From the rock surged a fountain. Some say it was salt water, a symbol of naval strength. Others say a magnificent horse galloped forth, its mane wild, its hooves of silver. A creature of speed, power, and war. Then came Athena, calm, composed. She knelt and pressed her fingers into the soil. From that spot grew a tree, an olive tree, slender and green, its fruit shining. It was not as dramatic, but it was rich in meaning: food, oil, wood, peace, and prosperity. The people chose Athena's gift. Poseidon's fury was instant. His sea crashed into the shores. Storm clouds gathered. Some say he flooded parts of Attica in vengeance. Others say he turned his back forever on the city. But his gift remained. Horses and naval strength would become part of Athens' identity. And though Athena claimed the city, Poseidon left his mark in stone and tide. Even in loss, his power was undeniable. The contest was not just a rivalry. It was a lesson. Power may be loud, but wisdom endures. Still, when thunder echoes through the Acropolis, some say Poseidon's voice can still be heard. Even gods are not immune to longing. Amid his rule of ocean and quake, Poseidon's heart stirred for a sea nymph named Amphitrite. She was a Nereid, one of the 50 daughters of Nereus, the old man of the sea. Graceful, elusive, and radiant as the first glint of sunlight on water, Amphitrite danced in the currents with her sisters, free, wild, untouched by power. Poseidon saw her once, perhaps near the shores of Naxos, or among the coral gardens of the Aegean. From that moment, he was captivated. He sought her hand in marriage, but Amphitrite fled, seeking refuge at the farthest edges of Oceanus, beyond even the sight of the gods. It wasn't rejection. It was fear. She knew what it meant to marry a god, to lose herself, to become queen. But Poseidon was not to be denied. He sent emissaries, searched the depths, and finally dispatched one clever messenger, a dolphin. The dolphin found Amphitrite, calmed her with songs of the deep, and spoke of Poseidon's love, not as a conqueror, but as a companion. Moved by the dolphin's words and Poseidon's persistence, she returned. The wedding was held beneath the sea, in the coral halls of Aegae. Gods and sea spirits alike attended. Poseidon placed a golden crown upon her head, fashioned with pearls and glowing sapphires. Amphitrite, once free and hidden, now sat beside him, queen of the deep. From their union came Triton, a merman with the torso of a man and the tail of a fish, bearing a great conch shell that could still storms with a single blow. They also bore Rhode, goddess of the island Rhodes, and Benthesachime, the lady of the deep waves. In thanks for uniting them, Poseidon placed the dolphin among the stars, Delphinus, a constellation forever swimming through the night sky. Their love was not soft, it was tidal, bound by depth, darkness, and awe. Where Poseidon ruled the ocean's rage, Amphitrite tempered it with grace. Together, they embodied the sea, beautiful, vast, and impossible to hold. Poseidon was a father many times over, his children scattered across myth like coral reefs in the sea. Some were divine, some monstrous, some tragic, and in all of them, his essence echoed, unpredictable, powerful, and deeply tied to nature's extremes. From Amphitrite came Triton, their noble son. He had the upper body of a man and the long tail of a fish. Often seen with a twisted conch shell, Triton used it to calm the waves or summon storms. Sailors prayed at sea, not just to Poseidon, but to Triton, the sea's herald, its voice. But Poseidon's offspring went far beyond his marriage. He loved widely and often, his passions as fluid as the tides. From the blood of Medusa, when she was slain by Perseus, came Pegasus, the winged horse. How could something so light, so divine, come from a monster? Yet Pegasus soared to Olympus, a symbol of inspiration, freedom, and divine speed. Another son, Polyphemus, the one-eyed giant cyclops who herded sheep on a lonely island. When Odysseus blinded him, it was to Poseidon that Polyphemus cried, and the sea god listened. The wrath that followed nearly destroyed Odysseus and his entire fleet. Then there was Charybdis, a monstrous daughter who became a terrifying whirlpool in the Strait of Messina. 3 times a day, she swallowed the sea and vomited it back. To ancient sailors, she wasn't just a hazard. She was Poseidon's fury personified. There were others still, Antaeus, a giant undefeatable so long as he touched the earth. Theseus, heroic founder of Athens, was sometimes said to be his son. Rhode, the radiant guardian of the island Rhodes. Poseidon's children were not bound by shape or morality. They embodied forces, waves that crash, winds that lift, whirlpools that devour, and legends that endure. To be Poseidon's child was to carry weight, not of inheritance, but of power. For better or worse, his legacy roared in their blood like a tide that could never be stilled. To most, Poseidon was lord of the sea. But to the people of ancient Greece, he held another, far more terrifying title, Enosigaios, the earth shaker. He wasn't just a god of salt water and storms. He commanded the trembling of the earth itself. When Poseidon was angered, the ground groaned. Earthquakes weren't understood in terms of tectonic plates or faults. They were Poseidon striking the seabed with his trident. With a single blow, cities collapsed. Cliffs crumbled into the sea. Harbors were swallowed whole. And nowhere was his wrath more remembered than in the lost city of Helike. Helike was a wealthy coastal city in Achaea, known for its temples, trade, and deep devotion to Poseidon. But one winter night, without warning, the earth split apart. A massive earthquake struck. The sea rushed in behind it. In moments, the city was gone, swallowed by the waves. Fishermen claimed they could still see the city's rooftops beneath the water for years afterward. A punishment, perhaps, for some unknown offense, or a reminder that even Poseidon's most faithful were not safe from his fury. During the Gigantomachy, the legendary war between the gods and the giants, Poseidon fought with unmatched violence. He pursued the giant Polybotes across the Aegean, finally hurling the island of Kos on top of him. In that single act, he demonstrated the unimaginable strength of nature when wielded by a god. But his wrath wasn't always cosmic. Sometimes it was personal. When Odysseus blinded his son Polyphemus, Poseidon did not simply curse the man. He made the sea itself an enemy. For 10 years, Odysseus fought wave after wave, delay after delay, storm after storm, all guided by Poseidon's vengeful hand. In Poseidon's realm, there was no such thing as a safe voyage. Only favor and its withdrawal. When the ground shakes beneath your feet, when a sudden tidal wave darkens the horizon, remember this: Poseidon does not roar often, but when he does, the world listens. In the sun-scorched lands of Argos, the rivers had run dry. The Danaides, 50 daughters of King Danaus, searched endlessly for water, but the earth had turned to dust, and the sky offered no rain. Among them was Anemone, known for her grace and purity. One day, while wandering alone in search of springs, she encountered a satyr, wild, brutish, and lusting. He leapt from the trees, intending to take her by force. But before he could reach her, the ground shuddered. The sky darkened. A roar echoed from the sea. Poseidon appeared in all his terrible glory, and with a sweep of his arm, he cast the satyr down. The beast fled, terrified, into the woods. Anemone stood frozen. The god's eyes were deep as the ocean, his trident pulsing with power. She offered thanks, but Poseidon, struck by her beauty and boldness, offered more than safety. He offered himself. They lay together on the sun-baked soil, and from that place, Poseidon struck the earth with his trident. A spring burst forth. Cool, pure water gushed into the dry land. It became known as the Spring of Anemone, and it flowed for generations. Their union bore a son, Nauplius, who would become a famed navigator and king. He would found Nafplio, a port city that still bears his name. But this tale, like all myths, is layered. Amimone's story is not one of passive fate. She was a seeker of water, of life, of survival. And though her encounter with Poseidon carried divine weight, it also served a mortal need. She brought fertility to Argos, not through conquest, but through connection. Through her, a dry land was reborn. The spring of Amimone still symbolizes renewal, the moment when the land and the god meet, and something sacred flows forth. Not all gifts come from temples. Some are struck from stone, in moments of desperation, when a god's heart stirs for a mortal's courage. Though Poseidon ruled the depths, his presence was etched into the land as well, along rugged coastlines, atop windswept cliffs, in cities that hugged the sea. His temples stood like sentinels, reminders that the ocean had a will, a voice, and a god who could shake the earth beneath it. In Corinth, the temple of Poseidon rose near the isthmus, where land narrowed and ships were hauled over dry ground to avoid the perilous voyage around the Peloponnese. Every 2 years, the Isthmian Games were held in his honor, second only to the Olympics in glory. Athletes competed in chariot races, wrestling, and music, all beneath his watchful eye. But Corinth was not alone. The city of Helike built its might on Poseidon's favor. Its coins bore his trident. Its altars glowed with sacrifice. Yet one winter night, an earthquake shattered the earth, and a tsunami devoured the city. Survivors spoke of angry roars from the sea. Helike was never rebuilt, left beneath the waves, a sunken memory of divine punishment. In Onchestos, Poseidon was worshipped in the grove of Boeotia, where his sacred horses were kept. To the Greeks, Poseidon wasn't just god of the sea. He was Hippios, lord of horses. The connection ran deep. Both waves and horses could carry man across vast distances. Both could turn wild, and both answered only to him. In distant Delos, Teneron, and even in colonies across Ionia and Sicily, his temples offered safe passage for sailors and travelers. Statues of him wielding his trident guarded harbors. Offerings of bulls, fish, and oil were cast into the sea, seeking favor or forgiveness. Yet perhaps the most powerful shrine to Poseidon is one that remains unmarked: the ocean itself. Every time a sailor casts off, every time a fisherman returns safe, every time a quake rattles the shore, the ritual continues. Poseidon doesn't need temples of marble. His altar is the tide. His hymns are sung in salt and surf, and his presence is as eternal as the sea that still kisses every coast of the old world. Time passes. Empires fall. Names are forgotten. But the sea remains. So too does the echo of Poseidon. Though temples crumble and statues erode, his story endures, not just in marble, but in myth, in tide, in every wave that touches the land. To the Greeks, Poseidon wasn't just a deity. He was a force, raw, unpredictable, majestic. He was the rage in a storm and the hush in a harbor. He was the quake beneath your feet and the current beneath your ship. He was a lover of mortals and monsters alike, a father to heroes and horrors, a god of gifts and vengeance. His trident carved mountains. His passions birthed legends. His footsteps shook cities. He was worshipped with games, feared with offerings, remembered with salt on the tongue. Even today, his legacy is with us. Sailors still honor the sea before they journey. Earthquakes still shake the earth with a name we've never truly forgotten. In art, in poetry, in astronomy, Delphinus the dolphin, Pegasus the winged horse. His stories drift like currents through our culture. And deep in the subconscious, in the part of us that stares at a darkening sky over the ocean and feels both awe and fear, we remember. We remember that once, a god claimed the sea as his own. Poseidon's myth is not a tale of conquest, but of nature, of wildness, of respect. The Greeks understood this, that to live with the sea is to live with something bigger than yourself, something older, something divine. So when the storm comes and thunder rolls across the water, when the earth rumbles beneath your feet, when the tide pulls just a little harder than expected, whisper his name, for the sea listens, and Poseidon still stirs.